let's get straight into the mayor's race and a couple of the elections last night, and maybe if we have time, a few of the stories we missed on our brief sabbatical last week. But I will say now on the show, like what I said to several people who asked me my thoughts about this last night at the one of the victory parties here in Brooklyn, which is like it's this. Today, Zohran Mamdani is mayor of New York City. And I'm sure last night was fun, but like he woke up this morning to now inhabit probably the worst job in the, in the United States of America, because overnight you become, as mayor of New York City, the sin eater for like the rage, frustration, and anxiety of roughly 8 million people. And like being realistic, I think a lot of his more ambitious agenda will be checkmated by the very powerful interests that run this city. You can point to the interview I did with him last week and his, to my ears, not entirely impressive answer on retaining Jessica Tisch as police commissioner. But that being said, his election represents a catastrophic, if not apocalyptic, loss of control for like a lot of like the elite political power brokers in this country, certainly like the capitalist class, and certainly the Israel lobby. And just the knowledge of knowing that there are so many people who I absolutely detest who are furious right now makes, at least in my opinion, participating in the rotten sham of electoral politics in this country a lemon worth squeezing for a little bit of that juice. Because, you know what? It feels pretty good. And like I say that couching this in like, you know, a full, sober, and clear-eyed assessment of what Zohran Mamdani will be able to achieve as mayor, and like, and also the idea that like an electoral campaign is not a movement, and also that ultimately he is still a Democrat. He ran as a Democrat. It's their party, not ours. So once again, we're sort of in the position of hoping that the guy we all think is good and on our side follows through on that, but not really having much leverage or means of disciplining him should he not do that. But that being said, like that's the only pessimism, that's the only cold water I'm going to dole out here. Last night was awesome. He won, they lost. And you know, when I voted early for him last week, and I guess this is the last thing I'll say. When I voted for him early last week, I was interviewed as I came out of the polling place by some reporters with the Amsterdam News in Harlem, and they asked me, "What about his campaign? What's the issue that like that mattered the most to you when you cast your vote?" And I said, like, you know, free childcare, the rent freeze, the whole affordability thing. Like, I think obviously that's very important, but like, I can't lie. For me personally, the most motivating factor in this election for me was that this is an opportunity to establish a precedent that you can stand with Palestine and against Israel and this genocidal war that they're waging, and entirely their genocidal project of apartheid and ethnic cleansing. And not only will it not be a third rail that will derail your political career, it will greatly aid and enhance your ability to achieve higher office in this country, because that is where the people are, that's where the voters are. And if you add this in total, Kamala's loss and his win means I think going forward in the future it will be increasingly difficult for Democrats to run for office anywhere in this country supporting AIPAC, supporting Israel, and supporting the Zionist agenda. So that precedent has been set. Like I said, as mayor of New York City, I don't think it's going to do much to change foreign policy in this country, but it is clear now that like to be a Democrat in this and running it for election, you can't ignore or attack the pro-Palestine movement or whatever, like the conscience of where the party is at right now, I think has been firmly established. And that is a disaster for the people who have tried for months, years, you know, like every hour of the day leading up to this election, trying to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that though there were many contributing factors that brought Zohran from a long shot. I remember the first time we talked about him, we were saying, well, his campaign looks good, but Cuomo is polling like 3-1 against him.
Yeah.
And obviously they ran a near perfect campaign. They had the great asset of having like a actual organizational ideology behind it. But I think that for the uninitiated, for voters who didn't know him, which was a lot of voters who were otherwise amenable to him, one of the biggest things that probably helped him out was the fact that he was a Democrat they could vote for who was not tainted by Israel, which is shockingly rare. Shockingly.
Yeah, I feel like along those lines, I was thinking about like in a lot of the analysis of like how he went from like being like behind 20 points to Andrew Cuomo to beating him in the primary and then just last night in the general. You hear a lot about his charisma. You hear a lot about his social media and the videos. Once again, shout out Donald. Like his political communication was, top notch, and the videos were great. But I think like people are, I think, intentionally overrating that, like how much charisma matters, like more than politics. And I've been thinking about this in light of like when you hear most Democrats be interviewed or have to talk about an issue or policy, it comes out as like Kamala Pete Buttigieg gobbledygook. It's just drivel. It's just like they say absolutely nothing. And what I realized is that like when people talk about what makes a good political communicator or charisma in a political sense, it's just the ability to speak off the cuff and come across as authentic about something you believe in and speak about it in a way that is like, that you're light on your feet, but also it's like not just that you know what you're talking about, but you believe in what you're talking about, and it's easy for you to articulate a point of view because it's your point of view. And that is what most Democrats lack. They don't actually believe in anything, or what they do believe is like set out for them by donors and by political consultants, so that like when they're asked a question or has to talk about an issue, like for instance Israel and Palestine, it's like when like a logic problem like explodes a robot's brain because they're so hemmed in by like the things they can't say, the things they have to say, and also the fact that like what they're articulating they don't actually believe in or care about at all.
Yeah, I think that is, I think maybe the single most notable thing about Mamdani's style of communication and campaign, that he didn't condescend to people.
Yeah.
That democratic style of communication where, whether it's Kamala just struggling to even tread water in an interview, or Ruben Gallego saying, "We're the party that's going to help you buy a big truck." It is fundamentally condescending. Even if your posture is terrified and skittish and hoping, just pleading with your audience to like you, you are by default assuming that they are stupid, because you're outright saying that, well, they can't see how calculating and cynical I am.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
didn't see me 10 seconds before go, look, I'm going to say what these dum-dums like.
Yeah. And it's his policy, it's his politics that got him over the line here. And I remember when I first interviewed him on the show, this was before, as I said on the last one, like this was right before Andrew Cuomo got in the race. And I like, having lived in the city my whole life, having like I said, seen a lot of politics in this country and especially this city, I was just like, I could see the future. And I was so ready for the fact that like Cuomo's going to get in the race, and in a totally demoralized population of voters, on name recognition alone, he will coast to victory because he's just sort of like, oh, that's the guy whose name I know. Wasn't he governor or something? And then like, I guess I have to vote for him. But what Madani was able to do is like a credit to his campaign is that he ran a real campaign where he was like every minute of the day he wasn't asleep. He was like in the streets of New York. He was like talking to voters. He was through his videos or otherwise. He made his name and his presence felt. And as soon as people saw him and like heard what he stood for and what he wanted to accomplish, they were like, oh wait, I don't have to vote for Andrew Cuomo. And I think like once that certain critical mass was realized, Cuomo had no shot because nobody was really hyped to vote for him. They just did it out of habit, or they felt like they had to. And like all he had to do is provide a credible alternative. And that's why I think the primary was so important, is because I think there was a lot of people, especially people of an older generation, like our parents' generation, that looked at him and was like, oh, here's a nice guy. Like, I would love to support him, but is he for real? And the primary proved that he is absolutely for real. And I think what's happening now is like there's a lot of anger at this like irresolvable cognitive dissonance that they see, because like they believe in Democrats, they want Democrats to win. That's all they want. They're tired of losing, and then they see the leadership of the party just like pretend this guy doesn't exist after he pulled off the thing that they've been saying every day since Donald Trump got elected that the Democrats need to do desperately, which is like turn out young people and appeal to young men in specifically, and they all just completely ignored him and didn't even endorse him for the most part. And I gotta say, a cognitive dissonance here that's productive is the fact that like people are beginning to realize that if his agenda was just free buses, they would have gotten on board. But it's not that; it's the free Palestine part that's the problem for them, and that is why they did everything in their power to stop him from even after he was the party's nominee.
Thinking about how not existential in the sense that like AIPAC is going to pack up tomorrow and do the thing that no American Hezbollah does and actually move to Israel. But very symbolically and practically important. In light of that, it's shocking how arrogant Cuomo's campaign was from start to finish.
Astonishing.
Yeah, because it was always clear that the pitch of his campaign was, okay, let me take this loser shit job that's beneath me so I can run for governor or run for the House
President.
or run for the senators. Yeah. Let me use your shitty city that I've always hated as my stepping stone. And I will, I'll show Trump. We'll do what we did in 2020. Remember how great that worked out? And I mean, all those people are freaking out. I saw one of the most passed around posts today is that guy who he's basically like, guys, I've mentally ruined my son. My son's crying and freaking out. Zohran won. Like, I'm sure to lobby professionals, they were like horrified and they were taking this seriously because I think a lot of them are that insane and disconnected from reality and stupid. But Cuomo, like, it's difficult to go, this guy is a dangerous anti-Semite who hangs out with terrorists. And by the way, I like don't give a shit enough about this to like, I care about this so little that I'm hiring like D-tier Zionist TikTok influencers to run my campaign in last month. Like it was really like, you know that boomer thing of like showing up to a job you want with a broom to show them what a hard worker you are. He was doing the opposite of that.
Yeah. No, like the stunning thing to me was like he treated this whole campaign that like the idea that he would have to actually campaign and seek the votes of the people of New York was like an insult to him, and he kept portraying this idea in both the primary and then the general that it was everyone else's duty to just give him the nomination. First Democratic voters and then Republican voters in the general. Like he was just like demanding that Curtis Lee would drop out. That like it's just like you have to give it to me. Like the idea that I would have to court your vote or offer something in return for it is like is fundamentally abhorrent to him, and like he could not ever like not let on that that's the way he felt. That like having to be asked questions or like even shake the hands of the disgusting pigs that fill up this city is like he just couldn't do it. He couldn't fucking do it. And that's why he spent the last couple of weeks of this campaign churning out AI slop and accusing Zohran Mamdani of doing 9/11.
The other thing that I always thought was so funny about his campaign was how much, I mean, like a lot like me, he recognizes 2017, 2018 best years in human history. But unfortunately for him, he was running for office in 2025. And a big thrust of his primary campaign, this faded in the general, but a big thrust of his primary campaign was that he was the best at dealing with Trump. And he would point to his tenure as governor, to which I'm surprised no one asked, okay, what did you do? How did you deal with Trump the first time? How did you stop him? What would you do this time as mayor of New York? This job you don't even want.
Well, this time he got Trump's endorsement.
Yeah. I mean, show it like if that did not show how hollow it was, like that giving way to like, actually, I'm really good at working with Trump in the general, but it was such like an antiquated thing to run on. This idea that like, I guess that he would be the best at dealing with Trump because he had a really lauded communication style during COVID, which I guess that's one thing for the Trump 1 iteration of this. But when like he's sending Jap boots into cities, like, okay, so you're going to record a front facing video where your nipple ring is visible.
I can work with
great.
I can work with Trump. I can work with Trump. I understand him because we buy our women from the same store.
Yeah.
Felix, did you see? I posted this yesterday, but it was one of the last campaign videos that Andrew Cuomo put out, and to me, it was like the perfect reflection of his entire run for this mayor's race. one of his last campaign videos in New York City, running to be mayor of New York City, was about how much he loved his 1994 white Ford Bronco, and the whole video was about how it's not actually O.J. Simpson's car. And it's like, one, that's brilliant because, like, New York City, the car capital of America, people love driving here, people love their cars. But then also the whole video was like, a lot of people make fun of me and say I drive OJ's car, but it's not, because you'll notice this very small detail on the side which differentiates it from the one in the famous TV police chase.
That is the perfect message for him. It reminded me of what I still think the greatest campaign ad in my lifetime. David Perdue running for re-election in Georgia with the last frame of his ad, totally exonerated, no wrongdoing. That is, I mean, that's the greatest, but it's actually not OJ's car comes close. Like, it's sort of a sweaty, panicked reassurance from a guy who just touched you weirdly. That is the greatest symbol of his campaign.